Hello and welcome to this episode of Extra Time. My name is Charlotte Richardson and I am your host as we take a deep dive into the subject of facilities. Tom and I recently visited Bournville Warriors for the latest episode of In the Box. We went there and explored the theme of partnerships and how facilities can be unlocked through a variety of different means. We know that there are many challenges and opportunities that come with finding a football facility that is fit for purpose and is a home that can become a community hub. In this bite-sized episode of Extra Time, I'm delighted to say that I have a real expert in this field, no pun intended, Simon Wood, who is our FA Club consultant and also our facilities theme lead. Simon, thank you so much for joining me.
Good to be with you, Charlotte. Nice to see you.
Now, I know that you're an expert. For those joining us, fill us in about your career and the work that you've done over the years, not just only across the grassroots game, but the professional game around the subject of facilities.
Yeah, so almost 20 years now I've been involved in sort of the facility side of football, which I really enjoyed. Started out with the Football Foundation when it was first launched, and then sort of progressed into the FA as regional facility manager, covering sort of the southwest of England. And for the last sort of 5-6 years, been working as a consultant myself. I've been part of this program for about 4 or 5 years since it started, which has been great. But within that as well, also I've been involved with grassroots projects, as I said, but also through to working with quite a lot of clubs, particularly in the women's game. Obviously, a real growth area at the moment, and some of the challenges there about trying to ensure that we've got facilities fit for purpose to support the growth of the female game, both at the high end, so the Women's Super League level, sort of down through the Women's National League as well, and obviously the levels that feed that, Charlotte. So, yeah, it's been eventful over those sort of 20 years. Obviously, fantastic we've got this opportunity with investment, but also facilities continues to be, one of, if not the number one issue for a lot of organisations within the game.
Well, we have entitled this Extra Time episode a game-changing investment because, quite frankly, for football clubs, it can be, and there will be more of a focus on clubs as opposed to leagues in this episode. You work with many clubs, as you mentioned, across the whole football pyramid. What is the landscape looking right now for clubs who are trying to unlock potential funding opportunities? Some perhaps to transform and get new 3G pitches, but for others, there's a maintenance about it. And for other examples, perhaps a lick of paint here or a smaller size investment.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's a real range and a real mix of projects out there. Obviously, as you say, there's the clubs who are blessed in terms of they have some reasonable facilities and they are, now in a position to try and really make those more sustainable long term. And they only might, a bit of investment might be needed to upgrade them a little bit, down to clubs who are really struggling to access the high quality facilities that we want them to have access to, really, be that, artificial pitches, good quality grass pitches, changing rooms with, associated facilities such as clubhouses, etc. So a real mix. I think there's lots of positives. There is investment available through the Football Foundation. Obviously, the long-term plans around the National Facilities Strategy, linking that through to the local football facilities plans. And I would certainly say to any club, if you're not aware of things like the local football facility plans, is to get in touch with your county FA to understand what they are. But I think the scale of facilities that are needed is still huge. But hopefully, we'll start to see that step change that we're looking for over the next 4 or 5 years with the investment from the Football Foundation, really.
And for those who are new around here, we talk a lot about different themes, and with the work that the Football Association is doing with England accredited clubs in particular, we touch on themes like facilities. We've recently done a lot around community identity, finance, governance, and so on. For some people, perhaps there's a bit of tunnel vision around facilities, but more often or not, it's essential for clubs to get some foundational work right before they can even think about applying for funding. What tips would you give clubs who want to go for funding, who want to seek investment to improve their provision, to make sure that they've perhaps got those basic starters right, rather than getting through an application process and then finding out a bit later that they might not have those ducks in a row, so to speak? Is there anything that clubs can do initially just to be fit for funding?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, probably a bit of a pun, but you're right. It's those building blocks, isn't it, as you say, in terms of what needs to be in place before you can even start to look at trying to get funding. So I think it's having a vision. What is it you're trying to achieve? Be realistic about it as well, Charlotte. I mean, yes, there's an opportunity there, but for some people, a full size artificial pitch isn't the right thing. So it might be a pipe dream. So you need to be realistic about what is achievable. I think identify who your partners and your stakeholders are as well. What's your relationship like with your local authority, County FA, other organisations that might need to be involved in your project. Start some of those conversations early. By that we mean, talk to the County FA, talk to the Football Foundation, look at your situation around the land you've got. Is it going to be good enough for you long term, or will you need 5 years? You will have outgrown that. And then I think once you've started to do that, things like business plan, development plan, identifying where other funding will be needed to be sought from is important. The Football Foundation will be looking for you to have found other funding as well, so you do need a funding plan. And talk to other clubs that have been through that process locally as well. That they will be able to tell you what the journey is like, and it is a journey. I know clubs who started this journey 20 years ago and are still on that journey as well, really, Charlotte. So it's about managing expectations, as I say, as much as wanting to achieve what you want to achieve.
I think that's a really good point that you mentioned there about one club still being on their journey, because if you're a football club and you've got that strong sense of identity and vision, you're always going to be evolving and you're always going to be wanting either to grow or enhance what you're doing. So I think it's a really good bit of advice to always be open to opportunities for funding, and particularly, as you mentioned, with not just thinking about the football provision, but others as well, to help you perhaps unlock pots of funding that aren't always the Football Foundation, because of course, naturally, that's going to be the first place that people look. But on the subject of Football Foundation, because this is a bit of a whistle-stop tour around facilities, what would you say are sort of the priority areas for the Football Foundation? Because I think for a lot of people, they hear Football Foundation and instantly comes to mind a brand new 3G pitch, which for some clubs is going to be suitable and appropriate, but that's not the only thing. I know, particularly from episodes of In the Box, that there is still very much an emphasis on improving grass pitches.
Yeah, it's fair to say that a lot of their investment at the moment is for on pitch, as they would call it. So it's things such as, you say, grass pitch improvements, artificial pitch improvements, but there is some funding available for off pitch, so it'd be clubhouses, changing rooms. So that ranges quite a lot as well. Obviously, people associate them with their big grants. The £500,000, for example, into a full size 3G, as you say, is what people perhaps associate it with. But actually, there's funding available down to refurbishment of changing rooms or grass pitch maintenance equipment, goal posts, relatively small, modest amounts of money that will make a big difference. It could be storage containers, for example, for machinery or equipment. I know clubs are always crying out for storage. Where do you put the balls? Where do you put the goals? That sort of thing. So it's there to support those sort of small and modest sized projects as well. You're right. It's not always about the Football Foundation, and I do talk to clubs about that, sort of saying, well, what are your other options around funding first? Your own fundraising, the money that might be available locally. Clearly, things are tight at the moment for local authorities and other organisations, but there is still grants available from them. So have a look locally first, because it might be there's organisations who want to support people, clubs or organisations in their area, as I say. So for me, having a funding plan is important. Don't just get focused purely on that Football Foundation application. And just, again, thinking about different ways of raising money. We have some quite creative clubs out there who, through from the bag packing, the sort of the sell a brick kind of thing or buy a brick. People are now sort of selling part of a pitch, for example, if it is a 3G pitch. So there's some really quite innovative ways as well, as they're looking at the Football Foundation longer term, really.
I just wanted to pick up on something I know you and I have spoken about offline many times, and it came to mind recently visiting Bournville Warriors, who for many years were kind of spread out across the area of Birmingham, and they've come up with a really innovative partnership with a local academy. And speaking to them, you really got the sense of their identity and community coming together. Now they have a place to call a home. And for many
Yeah.
football clubs, there is that idea of finding their home, but then making that home a community hub. And for me, that's always been an example of best practice, because that is in turn going to be more likely to help clubs be more fit for funding, to be more attractive perhaps to sponsors, to then have that impact when it comes to fundraising. And I just wondered, is it perhaps a piece of advice that people listening in could take away, to think of themselves perhaps not just as football clubs, but more like community assets, because that will help them broaden their thinking when it comes to their facility?
Yeah, I think this long-term sustainability is part of the club development program. And I think by working with other sports, other community organisations, really embedding yourself as part of that community, as you say, then that can really lead to some great long-term partnerships. That example there, as you say, with a local school, for example, is great. But I also think there's other facility operators out there. I know organisations who are working with community centres, parish town councils, who are now taking on assets perhaps a bit more readily than previously. So that's another conversation to be having. So I think part of that journey is exploring your options. Have a look at your local area, who is running it and managing those facilities, what's missing in our community. Can we offer that where we are, or do we partner up with somebody else in order to be able to deliver that for the community as well? So that might be a space indoor that people are looking for, whether that's to hold weekly meetings or hold activities. That we've got some of our hubs now, our big clubs who are running indoor classes Monday to Friday, or they're hosting toddler groups in their venues as well. So there's some really innovative, should we say, and exciting ways that these clubs are really embedding themselves as part of the community with a range of partners as well.
To me, it seems like it's a team effort. You might be focused on your clubs and the players, the volunteers, the coaches, and so on. If you want to unlock funding, if you want that really transformative type of funding to go into your facility, you have to have teamwork, in the sense of reaching out, like you said, to your local county FAs, dialing into that local football facility development plan, talking to your network of clubs as well as your local community as well. Would you say that that perhaps is, again, another key tip for people to take away?
Yeah, you can't. The knowledge is there as well. We always talk about, don't we, as consultants? We know the answers in the room, or the answers out there. So I think by talking to more people is a real positive thing. And don't be afraid to ask. I mean, you say yes, you might be rivals on the pitch, but off the pitch, you can try and help each other. It's in the interest of the game that we have a healthy grassroots structure, that we have good facilities, we have great coaches, and all the other bits that come together. So why not ask other clubs that have been through, or even other sports? There's a lot to be learnt from what others are doing as well. So don't be afraid to ask those questions. And I think from that, then that will help inform you as a group. I think it's important for clubs, when they're looking at projects, to think about. You mentioned, they've got their existing volunteers, they've got their existing activities. You don't want to place more of a burden on those people perhaps already. So is there a need for a working group to be set up to look at this specifically, for example? Is there more expertise within your club that you're not actually tapping into at the moment? There might be project managers in your club. There might be design or technical expertise within your club that you're not really aware of. So don't be afraid to look within your own club as well, to get some of that expertise, but then recognise that you will need to bring in others from outside there really as well.
That is such a fantastic tip, because I was working with a club who were beginning the first phases of a new clubhouse build. And you get a lot of really diligent volunteers who take on so much of it themselves and really want to sort of help progress, that sometimes they forget that they have got that wider community. And it was a really simple initiative that we ran. We created a bit of copy outlining exactly what kind of expertise and services we needed. We put it on the website, and then sent a mail campaign out to the stakeholders, i.e. the parents of the players, just appealing for those kind of, do you work in this trade, do you work in that trade? And what we found was a huge amount of people got in contact, because not only did they have that skill base, but they might be business owners or sole traders, and
Yeah.
they want to help the team that their son, daughter, nephew, niece, whoever plays for. And that was just, that unlocked so many potential contacts as well. And building upon that point, again, you made about asking questions. For anyone that hasn't joined us on Clubhouse yet, please do so, because we have a fantastic network of volunteers. All of the FA Club consultants are on there. And more often or not, we're seeing more and more people just popping a little question on. It starts a discussion. There will always be an answer, so don't be afraid to reach out. Simon, whilst I've got you on this call as well, we've spoken a lot about best practice. And without naming names, I just wondered, do you have any advice for people where it does go wrong, those common mistakes or misunderstandings, misinterpretations, or so on, that you would just like to say to people now, because it might help them in the long run?
Yeah, I think that it is difficult, as you say, when you're living and breathing it, as our volunteers do and our clubs do, a fantastic job, and that's why we all enjoy being part of this, because there's so many amazing people out there giving so much time, as we say. But I think sometimes that's where they do get caught out of some of the pitfalls. So some of it, for example, is they've started work on a project, and by that we mean the actual physical build side of it. They've gone and started digging holes, or they've spent the money on buying a piece of equipment, that kind of thing. So certainly one thing is, don't go ahead and spend anything until you have either spoken to the likes of your county football association or the football foundation, because for a lot of funders, if you've gone ahead and started your project, and by that I mean, I say the build, or you've ordered something, then you're deemed to have started, so you're not eligible for funding. So that's certainly one thing. Some technical elements, things like planning permission. Often you're going to need planning permission for whatever you're trying to do, certainly if it's an extension or a build or a 3G pitch. So again, don't go ahead and necessarily apply for planning until you've sought advice, Charlotte from the Football Foundation, whoever, or you've got some steers, because again, if you apply for planning on something that's not compliant, then you've got to unpick that, which again delays or can add costs. So those are a couple of things. I think the other thing is just, again, thinking about realistic timescales. If you were talking about a large-scale project, as you mentioned earlier, like a full-size 3G pitch, that's going to be 12, 18 months away at the earliest. So bear in mind some of the timescales for these projects. If you're doing something more modest, a clubhouse refurbishment, those types of things, or changing room upgrades, then they might be able to be done relatively quickly during the closed season. But you have got to allow time, which I know can be frustrating for people a lot of the time. They just want to get on and do it. But just going back really on your point about the expertise within your club, I think that's where they can help you as well. If you have or do get access to some of that technical support from hopefully within your club, that's where they can just perhaps bring a bit of realism to some of the work you want to do, really.
Yeah, some wonderful nuggets of advice there. Thank you, Simon. So my final question to you, and it is a bit of a hard one, because I think, as we've already explored in this brief conversation, facilities is a huge subject, and for each club, wherever they're at their journey, the range of things that they want to do to make their club better, to make their club sustainable and fit for purpose in the future, it is starkly different from club to club. I think of the clubs that I work at, and each of them needs something niche and different. But with that being said, in terms of a generic piece of advice, something that you would like those that are joining us on this episode of Extra Time to really take away, that might change their thinking a little bit based on your experience and your years of expertise, what piece of advice, what golden nugget would you like to take this opportunity to say, so that they can take away back to their clubs and committees?
Well, great question, Charlotte. As you say, it's been some interesting ones over that sort of, I think, about 20 years. I think for me, probably the biggest bit of advice that I can probably sort of suggest is this bit around being realistic. That yes, there's a pot of money we have got access to through the Football Foundation, and it'd be great to spread that as wide as possible. But obviously, with the challenges of costs increasing and everything else, it might not be achievable in one go. So don't lose sight of what you're trying to achieve, but be realistic at this point. And it might be a series of phases. You might do phase one, the next 12, 18 months, and a phase two, phase three follows. So I think that's the big thing for me. It's a long journey, but if you're in it, and most people are in it for the for the right reasons, as we know, Charlotte, then you'll be part of an exciting journey. You'll be part of an amazing experience that as these things happen, you see that transformation within your club. You see how that brings new people into your club. It brings new players. We've seen some of our fantastic projects now, how the women's game has grown within their club, how the disability game has grown within their clubs, and that real connection with their communities. Those are the ones that you think, wow, that's not happened just overnight. That has been long-term planning. So I think it is, for me, just realistic and enjoy the ride, really.
I really like that advice, almost breaking it down into phases, perhaps almost like a game of football in itself. Get to half time, break it down a little bit, because like you say, these projects and these big plans, they don't happen overnight. And for that longer term benefit, you probably do need a bit of patience along the way as well. So great advice.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us for this episode of Extra Time. As I mentioned earlier on, if you want to pick up more advice, more wisdom from the likes of FA Club consultants like Simon on the theme of facilities and much, much more alongside that, then do join us on Clubhouse. Make sure that you subscribe to our Clubs and Leagues Hub on YouTube. You'll be alerted straight away when episodes like this drop. Until next time, goodbye.